हाँ. Well, good afternoon. Now, before the break, we were talking about the categorical imperative of Kant. There we had seen, just to have a recap, that this categorical imperative of Kant that we are talking about, well, he says that act in such a manner that you always treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of anyone else, never merely as a means, but always at the same time as an end. So, this is the basic principle of morality that he is talking about here. So, where we have seen that he says on the basis of this line that we have, in order to explain that further, in order to understand that further, we have been talking about that he says that moral command cannot be based on any particular thing like this marker, for example, pen, whose value is dependent on something else like the user in that case. Morality must be based only on that thing whose existence has in itself an absolute value or an inherent value, intrinsic value. And he says that only thing that can have such an absolute value which is not dependent on something else is humanity. So, humanity is that value that Kant is talking about here. What is the meaning of that humanity which should be the central value of, well, morality in the Kantian theory? We will talk about that next. So, change the paragraph and then after write further. Every rational being exists as an end in itself Every rational being exists as an end in itself and not merely as a means for some arbitrary use. Every rational being exists as an end in itself, nor merely as a means for some arbitrary use. This is the basic difference between, write down further, this is the basic difference between persons and things. This is the basic difference between the persons and things. Things have a relative or instrumental or extrinsic value. Things have a relative, extrinsic or instrumental value. They are important because they serve a purpose. They are important because they serve a purpose. Once they stop serving that purpose, they lose their value. Once they stop serving that purpose, they lose their value. Thus, they can be used merely as a means. But persons are rational being. Write down further. But the persons are rational being. They do not just have but the persons are rational being. They do not just have a relative value. They do not just have a relative value. Along with that, they have an absolute inherent or intrinsic value. Along with that, they have an absolute inherent or intrinsic value as well. Because of that, along with that, they have an absolute inherent or intrinsic value as well. And because of that, they have a dignity. And because of that, they have a dignity. Now, this is how we can understand the values of human. Now, what he is talking about in this paragraph that you have written here, he is saying that there are two types of values now that exist. One is the extrinsic value, relative value, instrumental value, or extrinsic value. Something which has only these values, they are the things, they are the object, like this marker, for example. So, they are things, they are object. So, things have a relative value because their value is relative to something else. So, value of this marker is relative to us who are using this marker. It is important till the time it serves a purpose. It is valuable because it serves a purpose. The pen that you may be writing with, well, that pen has a relative value. It has a relative value because it serves a purpose, allows you to write on a paper. It is important till the time it serves a purpose. Once it stops serving that purpose, then it loses its value. It can simply throw it away. You can break it down, you can destroy it, you can recycle it. It has lost its value. So, such thing whose value is relative, which can be lost completely, well, that is called a thing, that is called an object. In fact, he has said that anything which is a thing, things always have a price. Things have an equivalence. Things have a replacement. Things can be replaced. So, these are all the qualities of a thing. Things have a price, things have an equivalence, things can be replaced. So, suppose for example, you are writing with your pen. If suppose I am using your pen, I take your pen and I somehow break it, and you start fighting with me that, sir, you broke my pen, then I will tell you, okay, don't worry about it, I will pay you for that. Tell me how much. I can pay a price to you and the problem is solved, the pen is priced. Or it or pen can have an equivalence also, that I can tell you, okay, instead of a pen, use your pencil also maybe. Pencil is an equivalent of the pen. It can be replaced also. I will tell you, okay, don't worry, I will bring another pen. I can go to the market and buy another pen and replace your pen with that. Problem is solved. So, things have a price, things have an equivalence, things have a replacement. So, anything that has a thing has these qualities. They have instrumental value, they have a price, they can be replaced, they can be, well, equivalent, they can be equated in a way. Now, persons on the other hand, person like me or you or we all, persons on the other hand, well, we also have relative value, and because of that, we can also be used as a means. Person also have a relative value, and because of that, we can also be used as a means. We all, for example, use each other as a means. In this classroom, for example, all of you are using me as a means to achieve your end of learning ethics. And I am using all of you as a means to achieve my end of, well, earning a livelihood for myself. So, in this case, both of us are using each other as a means. In this sense, we are all like an object. So, in this classroom, to the extent, so far as I am acting as a teacher of ethics, then I am a thing. I have all the qualities of a thing. I have a relative value, that my value as a teacher is relative to my students who want to learn. Instrumental value, that I can work as an instrument to teach ethics, maybe it is an extrinsic value, it is outside me in a way, that has acquired by reading a book and I can deliver it to somebody else in that sense. Until that to so that far, till that extent, I can have a price. I can be paid a salary, for example. I can have equivalence also, that if you do not want to attend my class, then read all the books. Because whatever I am teaching, I might have written in some books and all. If you read all the books, well, you will know as much as I know. So a book can be equivalent of a teacher. There can be replacement also. Tomorrow, if I am not here, some other teacher will come and he will also do the exactly same thing that I am doing right now. So in this sense, again, there is no difference between me as a person and this pen as a can say as an object, as a thing. We are also, pen is also used as a means to achieve a purpose. I am also used as a means to achieve a purpose. That is how I can use. But along with that, he says the difference between me as a person and this pen as a thing is that along with having a relative value, I or you, for example, have an absolute value also, inherent value also, or intrinsic value also. Suppose, for example, today I have a value for you people because today I can teach you ethics. That is the value that I have as a teacher. After some time, suppose your course is over, then after my value as a teacher has been lost. Thereafter, I will not be able to teach you anything since after that. So my value as a teacher has been lost. But does it mean that I have lost all my value as a human being also? Well, of course not. Even after fulfilling all my purpose, I still retain some value in me, which is not dependent on what I can do for you. That is not the case with a pen. So when this pen stops writing, then it has lost all its value. You can simply throw it away and destroy and, well, recycle it maybe. I, on the other hand, even after fulfilling all my purpose as a teacher of ethics, I still retain some of my value. And so that value which is retained in us, that value which is not dependent on what I can do for you, well, this is what he calls the inherent value, absolute value, or the intrinsic value. That's very intrinsic to me rather than extrinsic, that what I can do to you. It is inherent in me rather than instrumental to achieve a purpose. It is absolute in me rather than relative to you whom I can teach. So that is what makes me person. And because of that intrinsic value that we have, we'll see the nature of that value shortly, but that value that we have, because of that, we have a dignity. So I have a dignity which this pen does not have. You have a dignity that your book does not have. Kant will say. So he had said that everything in nature, well, either has a price or has a dignity. What has a price is thing, what has a dignity is person. So, and what is a price, as we will see next topic, what has a price, okay, what is a thing, what has a price? Well, it is a object of market exchange. And what is a dignity? That is a can say domain of the ethical treatment. So that is where ethics and object can be, ethics and market can be decided, ethics and, or you can say the exchange can be actually differentiated in the Kantian theory. This is where you can say ethical aspect comes up. Now the next important question is that if the dignity is not priced, cannot be priced, then how can we treat the dignity of a person? This is what we talk about next. So change the paragraph and then after write further. This categorical imperative, demands us, requires us, this categorical imperative requires us to treat persons as end. Requires us to treat persons not as end. This categorical imperative requires us to treat persons with respect. Requires us to treat persons with respect. Persons with respect. It is our duty to respect. It is our duty to respect the rational being. It is our duty to respect the rational being. It is our duty to respect the rational being. Kantian respect, write down a few more lines before we talk about the nature of that respect. Kantian respect differs from all other forms of Kantian respect differs from all other forms of human attachments, all other forms of human attachment like love, all other forms of human attachments like love, sympathy, friendliness, solidarity, etc. Friendliness, solidarity, etc. Because these are the moral sentiments, which bring us, because these are the moral sentiments which bring us closer to some people, than to others. Bring us closer to some people than to others. Kantian respect is the, write down further, Kantian respect is the Kantian respect is the respect for humanity which resides in Kantian respect is the respect for humanity which resides in all of us, in an undifferentiated form, This respect has, one more last line, this respect has nothing to do with anything particular about a person. This respect has nothing to do with anything particular about a person, like who he is, where he is from, etc., etc. Who he is, where he is from, etc., etc. So this is what he will say about this thing. So in a way, what he means here, he says that only thing that we can, since we cannot pay the price for a person's dignity, so only thing that is required from us to do with the dignity is to respect the dignity of a person. And this respect, Kantian respect as we call it sometimes, this Kantian respect is different from all other forms of human attachment like love. We have written that love, sympathy, solidarity, friendliness, because all of these sentiments are the moral sentiments which bring some people closer to us than somebody else. If you love somebody, then that person becomes special to us than anybody else. If you are a friend to somebody, that person comes closer to us than anybody else. If you feel solidarity or sympathy with somebody, that person comes closer to us than anybody else. And anything that differentiates between the people as closer or not so close cannot be the basis of morality. Morality must be universal. So Kant will say that this respect that we are talking about, it is very different from all other forms of human attachment like all of these. It is respect for humanity that resides in all of us, that exists in all of us in an undifferentiated form. We will see the meaning of that undifferentiated form shortly. That resides in an undifferentiated form. So this respect, again, for last line is very important here, that this respect has nothing to do with anything particular about that person, like who he is, where he is from, etc., etc. Just think of it. What I mean here is something like this. Suppose, for example, suppose we are talking about the nature of that respect that Kant is talking about. Now suppose there is a person called A, me, you or anybody. Now Kant will say that we all have around us many different layers of particularity which make us unique, which make us different from all of us, some particular fact about us which is unique to us, which is special to us. So these particular facts, like for example, this is your name, this is your caste, religion, profession, nationality, whatever you can see. So Kantian respect is not about these particular facts that define us who we are. This respect is about humanity that is there inside us, well, without any particular reference, without any particular fact in that sense. It is something like this, for example. Suppose, for example, if I ask you that, do you respect me? You will say yes, hopefully. Now, if you say yes, then after I will ask you, why do you respect me? You might possibly say, I respect you because you are our teachers. Normally, we respect our teachers. I'll tell you, forget about that, I'm not your teacher. Would you respect me even then? You might possibly say yes. Why so? Well, you might possibly say that you are elder to me in our age, in my age, we respect our elders normally. I'll tell you, forget about that, I'm not your elder also. Now, you may say many things about me, that my age, my background, my education, my qualification, my profession, my behavior, my character, my caste, my religion, my nationality, etc., etc. I have all these characteristics in me. Now, if I remove all these things, then at the end of it, I am just a human being without any quality. Would you respect that human being? If you say yes, then this is what Kantian respect is all about. So this respect is not about who I am, whether I am a male or female, black and white. So that person, whoever that person is, whether he is male or female, black or white, or rich or poor, educated or uneducated, teacher or farmer, whoever that person is, just because of the fact that he is a human, there is some humanity in him. And that humanity is something that should be the object of respect in that case. This is what Kantian respect is all about. It's not about who we are. It is about there is a humanity inside us. That humanity which is an undifferentiated form in a way, well, that is what we should be respecting in that case. Now, this respect that Kant is talking about, it should be given to, Kant will say, a great person like, say, Gandhi. Gandhi was a great person, but remember, his greatness was a particular fact about him. That it was a special thing about him that made him special. This respect is not about the greatness of Gandhi. This respect is just about the humanity that Gandhi was the carrier of. So that is easy to understand. We all respect Gandhi, but Kant will say this respect has to be given even to such a bad person like, say, Ajmal Kasab. He was a terrorist, he was a bad person, but his being a terrorist or his being a bad person was a particular fact about him. That again made him unique. Morality is not about whether you are a great person like Gandhi or a bad person like, well, Kasab. So, his being a bad person or a terrorist, for example, was a particular fact about him. Behind that, he also was a human being. And as a human being, he also had a certain humanity, and that humanity deserves respect on our part. This is what morality in Kantian theory is. Now, I will tell you in later class, maybe tomorrow's class, that how did we, well, respect Kasab, because as I told you in some other class earlier also, that to a great extent Indian constitution is a Kantian constitution. We do follow principles similar to Kantianism in our constitutional framework also. So, I will tell you later on that when we talk about Indian constitution and the morality, then we will see that how did we respect Kasab also in our constitutional system that we have in our country. But right now, only thing that you need to remember was that, well, everybody, whether that person is a great person like Gandhi or a bad person like Kasab, well, both of them have, well, certain humanity, and for that they deserve our respect, and morality commands us that we should respect that person, that humanity in that person. This is what Kantian respect is all about. So, this is what Kant will say here. Now, how do you show that respect? What is the form of that respect? Now, two things Kant will say about how do you show that respect. One thing is that he says that at the most basic level, whenever we treat a person, then we should treat a person with normal respect. That, well, that everybody has a due for that. So, but problem with us is that Kant might possibly say, problem with us is that in today's marketing society, consumerist society or materialistic society, if you go in the market, then the amount of respect that you have in the market often is directly proportional to the thickness of the purse that you carry with you, or size of the credit card that you have. So thicker is the purse, more respect you will get in the market. Bigger is the credit card that you have, more respect you will get in the market. Kant will say that is not what ethics requires. So respect that is due to us is not dependent on whether we carry a purse or not, whether we are rich or poor. But this is where very often the problem begins. You know, there was a film I have watched long ago. Some of you might have seen. There was a scene in that film. It is a film of Amitabh Bachchan. Again, that old man, not the angry young man. So, tell me which film it was. So, in this film, what happens that Amitabh Bachchan, a role played by Amitabh Bachchan, an old person, a tall person with a wearing tie, suit, that French cut beard, a smart person. Now, he is walking on the pavement of a road. Now, he passes through a luxury car showroom. Now there was a car was on display there. He looks at the car with lot of admiration. Now the salesman comes out and he asks him that, please sir, have a test drive. Now initially he refuses to have a test drive, but when on the insistence of the salesman, he goes for a test drive. And after he came back, then after he admires, wow, such a wonderful car it is. To which salesman tells him that, okay, if it's such a good car, then please have a, let's proceed with the sale and all. But the moment he talks about sale, Amitabh Bachchan tells him that no, I don't have enough money to buy such an expensive car. Now, the moment he says that I do not have enough money to buy an expensive car like this, that this salesman thrashes him on the ground and says, how dare you touch this car if you don't have the money. Then after Salman Khan comes and the film proceeds after that. I hope that you may have figured it out, it is Bhagwan. Now, this is an important thing. This film is Bhagwan. Now, this is an interesting thing. The idea here is that he is a poor person. Does it mean, just because he is a poor person, does it mean that he is a less human? Kant will say that no. That as a salesman, first of all, Kant will say, as a salesman, first of all, you have no obligation to offer him a test drive. You should have asked him first that, sir, do you have enough money to buy such an expensive car? If yes, then please have a test drive. But you did not ask that question. You simply assumed that he is a rich person. And on the basis of that assumption, you simply offered him a test drive. And later on, when you come to know that, well, this assumption was wrong and he is not a rich man, then you simply thrash him on the ground. Kant will say that is unethical. So, idea here is that we are more than the money that we carry. There is a humanity inside us that does not depend on whether we are rich or poor, black or white, male or female, educated or uneducated, Indian or American, Pakistani, whoever we are. There is saint or evil, whoever we are, behind all these particular facts about us, there is something inside us that does not depend on, well, anything particular about us. Morality requires the respect for that in a way. So, this is what it should be, the command of morality should be the requirement. This is the basic level of moral respect. Now, in practical situation, in the market exchange situation, for example, how can we show that respect? It is an informal thing that we should respect each other regardless of who that person is. But in our interactions, for example, a formal interaction, economic interaction, for example, what could be the meaning of that respect which Kant is talking about? Let's talk about that a little now. But before that, remember, we are talking about respect for the humanity. Now, can you tell me what should be the basic meaning of the term humanity in the Kantian theory on the basis of what we had discussed in our previous class? I hope some of you may have figured it out. The Kantian theory, well, says humanity is actually, in Kantian theory, is about rationality. Humanity is about rationality. That, remember, first line that I made you to write in this theory was that only thing that differentiates a human being from the non-humans is our rationality. So, if you remove rationality, then there won't be any difference between us, the humans, and the non-humans. So, this is what we had talked about. So, humanity essentially means rationality in the Kantian theory. And what is the most common expression of most open and you can say most open and external obvious expression of human rationality? He will say that is autonomy. Respect for autonomy. So respect for humanity means respect for rationality, which means respect for autonomy. What is the meaning of autonomy? We have discussed a lot about autonomy in our earlier class. Autonomy in this theory essentially means that our ability to set or choose our own end. Our ability to set or choose our own end. The idea here is that this is what we have talked about in earlier class. So idea here is that nature always chooses and sets an end for us, but we always have this ability that we can override the natural end and we can choose our own end as well. Suppose for example, nature chooses an end, sets an end for you. Suppose that you are very thirsty. What does that mean? Nature sets an end for you that yes, bring me water, I am thirsty. Your biology tells you. Now you have this ability to override that, and you can tell the nature, your body, that no, I am not going to have water right now, I will wait for the class to be over. You have become master, you have set your own end that is separate from the end of the nature. You are hungry, for example, your body is demanding, setting an end, bring me food, but you can tell your body, please shut up, and I am on hunger strike today, I am on a fast today, so I will eat only tomorrow, not today. So your nature is setting an end that food must be brought. You set your own end that no, today I will not eat anything, I will eat only 24 hours later. You set your own end that is independent of the end set by the nature. So nature always sets an end for us, but we always have this ability and tendency to assert our humanity and override the end set by the nature. So autonomy is about that. So finally you can see that in Kantian theory, respect for humanity means respect for rationality, which means respect for autonomy, which means respect for the end of the other person that we are dealing with. Now that is where we can understand the exact meaning of the respect. Let's take a few examples. Suppose for example, suppose after the class is over at 4 o'clock, you go out of your home wherever you are watching this lecture. So you go out of your home and go to a coffee shop, and suppose you take a cup of coffee from that person to relieve yourself, you are very exhausted. Now you take a cup of coffee from that person to relieve yourself. Now in this case, what are you doing? Now you are using that coffee wala as a means to achieve your end of satisfying, well, your end of refreshing yourself. There is nothing wrong in that. We all use each other as a means, as we have seen here. So we are using him as a means, but at the same time, what is your duty as a person? Your duty as a person is to respect his end now. This is where the end is there. This ability to set the end is what is the absolute value. So what is your duty? Your duty is to respect his end in return. What is his end? Why is he selling the coffee? Well, he is selling the coffee because he wants to earn some money selling each cup of coffee. So at the end of your transaction, if you pay him the money in return, then you are respecting his end. Respecting his end. Now, so that will make your action moral, and you don't have to bother about what is he going to do with that money. He may not need that money, he may spend that money in the gambling or drinking, etc. That's none of your business. He is a rational person, he has set an end for himself, and it is your duty to respect that end. So if you pay him the money in return, then if you pay him money in return, then you are then after you are respecting his end, that will make your act moral. But suppose for example, if you refuse to pay him the money at the end of the transaction, then you are using him merely as a means. And if you are using him merely as a means, then your act will become immoral. It is not amoral now, it will become immoral, unethical in that case. So any such example, suppose for example, let's take a second example. Suppose for example, after the classroom, suppose you take an auto to reach some destination. If you take an auto to reach your destination, then you are using that auto wala as a means to achieve your end of reaching your destination. There is nothing wrong with that. We all use each other as a means. But at the same time, what is your moral duty now? Your moral duty is to ensure that what is his end of that auto wala. What is his end? Why is he plying auto on the road? Well, he wants to earn some money. So at the end of the journey, if you pay him the money that you agreed on in the beginning, then you are respecting his end. That he has an end that he wants to earn money with some purpose and all, and it's your duty to respect that. So if you pay him the money, then well, that act will become moral. But if at the end of the journey, if you refuse to pay him the money, then Kant will say it will be unethical, because in this case you have used him merely as a means, you have not respected his end. So the idea here is that he will say every transaction that we have, every interaction that we have, we all each use each other as a means. So there is nothing wrong in that. But whenever you are using somebody as a means, then it is your duty to respect the end of that person as well. So in this classroom, for example, my end is that I want to earn a livelihood for myself, salary for myself. Suppose I get my salary, then after, what is my duty towards you students? Well, my duty towards you is that I must respect your end. What is your end? That you want to learn ethics in order to prepare yourself better for the exam. Now, it's my duty to ensure that your end is fulfilled in the best possible manner, and I must, well, deliver that. So if I do so, then my act of taking my salary in this situation will become an ethically justified act. This is what Kant will say. So in every human transaction, we use each other as a means, but at the same time, we must also respect. So our interaction must take place at two levels. One level is that when you are using each other as a means, and second level is that when you are using each other, you are respecting each other's end. So this respecting each other's as end, he calls that as kingdom of end. So this is what he says. He says that we must always exist in a kingdom of end when we should respect each other's end. That is what makes our act morally justified, a moral act. Now, next important question is that if you do not respect the other person's end, then what are you doing? So suppose, for example, if you take coffee from that coffee wala and do not pay him the money at the end of it, then what are you doing? Well, you are actually in that case reducing the value of the person to the level of the thing. And this act of, this process of reducing the value of the person to the level of a thing is often known as objectification of the human being. Objectification or commodification of the human being. So you are treating a human being as an object, you are treating a human being as a thing. So you are commodifying, you are using the human being as a commodity. That is something that Kant will say is wrong. So human being must be evaluated differently than the things or an object. Otherwise, you are actually objectifying the human being. You often say, for example, that women are objectified in the film industry or the fashion industry, etc. What is the meaning of that objectification? Well, women or maybe her body is used merely as a means to achieve the end of the profit of the filmmaker or the advertiser. Kant will say that is unethical. No human being should be objectified. We should never treat a human being merely as a means. So that is the idea that Kant will be talking about here. So this is the meaning of the objectification, and that is the thing. Now, this idea that persons should not be objectified, problem with us, Kant will say that morality requires that you must differentiate between the person and the thing. Thing must be used and person must be respected. Problem with us often is that we start using the person and respecting the things. Car becomes more important than the person who drives the car. Kant will say that is unethical, that human being must not be evaluated below anything. Every object must be evaluated well below the humanity. Humanity must be above all other evaluation. So car cannot be more important than a human being. That is the idea. The driver, for example, the person who drives the car in that case that we talked about. So this is what Kant will say in that situation. Now this idea of Kant that human beings should not be objectified, you can use this idea in many such, you can say, examples here. The idea, let's take many such event of the current affairs also. Let's take one example. A few years ago, a very tragic case has happened in somewhere in Chhattisgarh. Bilaspur was perhaps the place. I hope that you remember. Some of you may have read that in the newspaper. What happened on that day, that class, almost before 1 year before the COVID, and it has become a national news. Every newspaper had written editorials, etc. So एसी चल रहा है क्या? एसी चल रहा है क्या? एसी चला दो, गर्मी लगती है. So what happened in that case, that in Bilaspur or somewhere, there was a you can say February, March it has happened on that year. And what happened on that year, that there was a you can say healthcare workers or doctors in that area, government doctors and all. Well, they you can say they had made a makeshift artificial sterilization camp under the family planning program in India. And one day you can say a large number of women were you can say subjected to the sterilization operation, family planning operation, and this operation was done in a very unhygienic manner. So unhygienic this whole thing was that on one single day almost 22 women had died. After death of 22 women, well, it became national news. Every newspaper talked about that, the editorials were written, articles were written, and TV channels also discussed that in detail on that day. Now, during that time, there was one, in the Hindustan Times an article was published, I think written by Poonam Mutreja. Poonam Mutreja is the, you can say the director of the India Population Foundation, and she often writes on the women related issue, particularly family planning and all those issues and all. So, in that article, she made an argument that is exactly what we are talking about here. So, sort of I will summarize the whole article here for you, how this argument can be used to understand such events, such tragedies, for example. Now, what she wrote, that problem with the family planning program in India is that, she wrote that thing, that problem with the family planning program in India is that in India we follow a target based approach for family planning. We follow a target based approach for family planning. What is the meaning of the term target based approach? That these doctors, for example, they are given a family planning, you can say that the government doctors or healthcare centers, etc., they are given an annual target, that every year how many family planning operations they have to do. So annual targets are given to them. Now these doctors, what they do, that during the 10 months of the year they enjoy their life, and when the last 2 months come, February, March for example, then they start feeling the pressure of the target, and they go to the poor area of village and the slum area of the towns and all, and they give some bribe to the male members of the family, a few hundred rupees for example, and they can say, or some can say that bottle that they value a lot, the desi for example. So they give some bribe to the male members and they take the signature of the male member, and then after, well, they collect a large number of women for these family and carry them to a makeshift sterilization camp in some central area, and carry these women like cattle in a truck or tractor. In one tractor, for example, she wrote there that 50 women, in one truck 100 women, and these women are transported to these makeshift sterilization camp, where sterilization is done in a very unhygienic condition. And then after, when the target is met, numbers are met, then these women are simply asked to go back to their home and take care of themselves. Every year, a number of women die in such operation. So women's death is not a big unusual thing. Every year number of women die. This year it became a big news because on a single day in a single such camp, 22 women had died. But otherwise it's a very common, usual thing that according to her that happens. Now what is the problem in that case? Problem in that case, she said, was that in these cases you can say what is happening, that women are used merely as a means to achieve the target, which is the end. So targets are the end and women are used merely as a means, and once the target is met, then these women are simply asked to go back to their home and take care of themselves and all. Kant will say this is unethical. She said that this is the wrong here. So now she added one interesting angle in the whole situation also, that she wrote, for example, that in the previous year when this event has happened, in the whole of Rajasthan 5,000 sterilization operation was done. And out of the 5,000 operation, think of it, only one operation was done on man, 4,999 was done on women. Now, next day of that event, that article that I read in the newspaper, well, Indian Express has published a full page coverage of family planning program in India. because as a response to that event itself, that tragedy itself. Full page coverage on explained page. Explained is a page in Indian Express that I hope that many of you might be reading there. Now in that page, Indian Express also made this point that in the whole of India, in the family planning program that is run by the government, 98%, think of it, 98% of operation is in India is done on the women. Only 2% operation in India is done on the men. And that too, when operation of women, you must be aware, operation of men on the one hand is very simple operation. A small operation is there. So simple it is that after the operation, the men can walk back to their home. Women's operation on the other hand is much more complicated. More invasive surgery happens or more aftercare is required. So even after it being so simple, only 2% of operation is done on man. And even after it being so complicated, 98% of the operation is done on the women. Why so? How does it happen? Well, it happens because women are easier targets. So women are used as a means both by the health officials and by the patriarchal system of the society. So women are double objectified in that case. That was the problem. Now, what can be the solution to this whole thing? Now, she said in that article further that one solution can be that now is the time that we should move from a so-called target-based approach to the choice-based approach. Target-based approach to the choice-based approach. So, what is the meaning of the term choice-based approach? She said that the government should first thing that the government should do is to expand the reproductive choice of the women. So that expansion has to be there. That is the first important thing, because sterilization was the preferred method of family planning during the emergency 50 years ago. And for the last 50 years, many different methods of family planning has been developed by the doctors. So first of all, you should expand the reproductive choice, like the temporary contraceptive, for example, spacing of the children, for example. We should focus on other methods also and make women aware about these choices, and then after encourage them to make their own choice. If they make their own choice to limit the family, then that will be their autonomy. There is nothing wrong in that. But if you are coercing them by giving bribe and forcing, somehow manipulating them in order to fulfill your target, Kant will say that will be unethical. So that is what could be that is the problem in that case, morally speaking, and that could be the solution of that problem from the moral point of view. Now the problem with our modern society is that in our modern society we have become so strongly target oriented that targets have become so important that we forget everything else in order to meet our target. In many hospitals, I have heard about that, big hospitals, the doctors are given a weekly or monthly target, billing target, that how much billing you have to do every month and every week, maybe every day also maybe. And these doctors, what will do, they do that in order to meet the targets of their billing, well, they, you can say, they in a way, they often, you can say, do the over medication, etc. for the patient. Suppose for example, you go to such a hospital, even for a small problem like cough and sneezing, then doctor will write 10 tests on you, blood test, urine test, ultrasound, ECG, etc., etc. And when all the result comes normal, then after they will prescribe a cough syrup for you. Kant will say that is unethical. So as a doctor, it is desirable, it is required, it is okay for you to charge a fees from your patient. There is nothing wrong in that. But once you charge a fees and you fulfill your end of whatever fees that you think is deserved, then after, what is your duty towards the patient? Your duty towards the patient is to ensure that their end must also be respected. So it is your duty now to ensure that they get the proper treatment, not the coercion in order to force them to undergo a treatment that is not necessary in that particular case. In that particular case. So this is what Kant will say will make it unethical. But today you can say these targets have become very, very big, can say pressure on the people in the market and all. I have heard a few years ago, there was a case, in Delhi perhaps itself it happened, Delhi NCR. Well, a big hospital was there, a patient had died and the dead body of the patient was kept on ventilator for 2-3 days in order to meet the target of the billing target of the hospital. Somebody told me a film also has been made on this whole scene, and you can say, but it is a fact that it actually happens in the reality. Kant will say that is what is unethical. So You must not value everything like target, for example, above the human ends. Human beings should not be used merely as a means to achieve any such targets or so. This is what Kant will say about all of these things. So, as I told you in the beginning of this topic, that a few years ago there was a question in the UPSC exam that what do you mean by treating a person as a means and as an end? Discuss that with respect to some you can say to modern techno-economic society. So, you can write in the you can say the meaning of this term, treating a person as a means and as an end, and then after, well, you can use some techno-economic example. Like for example, these hospitals like Facebook, for example, Cambridge Analytica, for example, where many these technological giants, they use our data, well, in order to increase their own, they manipulate our choice, for example, in order to meet their financial needs. Sometimes they promote a certain political propaganda, ideological propaganda. They try to manipulate our shopping behavior, our relationships, or our, you can say, the political opinion. So all these things, again, they often try to influence us without us knowing that we are being manipulated by them in order to fulfill their financial needs. So this is where Kant will say it is wrong and we should not allow that to happen. So that is the meaning of the term, treating a person as a means or as an end, and that can be the solution of that. So this is one thing. Now before we talk about next point, let us take some question that I think has been asked. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Next question, Biswajit. Sir, is Kant said respect universal, then where our autonomy freedom is? I hope that you got your answer, Biswajit, in the previous discussion. Next question, Anil Kumar Roy. Anil Kumar Roy, sir, in case of coup in many Latin American countries and African countries, and the military generals are appointed by the executive authority, they are supposed to obey the order and obey constitution and president and not to interfere in domestic politics. But it is a booty that they initiated coup against existing authority and capture power. What kind of morality and duties and ethics are associated with this? Well, I hope that you can understand that yes, these coups are unethical, because as you already wrote in your question that these military can say officers or generals are appointed by the civilian authority. They are given power by the people's constitution and they overthrow the same thing. So that, according to Kant, will be unethical. They are using those people merely as a means to achieve their own end. So Kant will definitely say that any such coup is unethical. In this case, people are merely used as a means to achieve the end of these generals to have their own power or booty, whatever you can call it. Next one. Sir, is Sigarian unethical? If yes, then why not government takes steps? Sigarian is what? What is Sigarian? Be more explicit in your question. Sigarian, I am sorry, I am not able to understand. Write your question again with a little more explanation. Sigarian is what? So, that is what we can see Kantian theory. Now, next important thing that we will talk about is that how can we use this idea of Kant in order to understand many moral questions of our time. So, this is what we will talk about in the rest of the class today. So, change the paragraph and then after write further, application of Kantianism, application of Kantian theory. Now, we will talk about many such applications of Kantianism, and in all these applications that we will talk about here, we will try to compare the Kantianism with the previous theory that we had discussed in our class, that was libertarianism. So, this is what we will do here. So, let us talk about some of the important applications of Kantianism in contrast to the libertarian theory with which we will compare all of that. First one is, write down the case of suicide. Now, what do you think a libertarian will say about suicide? Of course, perhaps all of you will say that according to libertarian, suicide is right, because it is based on the principle of self-ownership. I am the owner of myself, so I have a right to end my own life as well. So, but what do you think Kant will say? So, according to libertarian, suicide is right. But Kant will say that no, suicide is wrong, suicide is 100% wrong, absolutely wrong, categorically wrong. What is wrong in suicide? Write down further. According to Kant, suicide is wrong because in this the person uses himself or herself merely as a means. The person uses himself merely as a means to achieve his own end of eliminating his own suffering. His own end of eliminating his own suffering. Now, this is the reason for which Kant will say that suicide is wrong. Because why do people commit suicide? People commit suicide because the problems of life have become very difficult. So difficult, so big that they do not find a solution. So as a solution, they think that they will kill themselves. And they think that with me, all my problems will also be gone. So that is why people commit suicide. No, nobody commits suicide for the sake of, for example, have an experience of it, let's do it, how does it feel? So nobody commits suicide for an experience. People commit suicide because of as a solution to the problem. So Kant will say that is what makes suicide wrong. Now this gives a very important insight about suicide further. What is that insight? Write down further. Respect for humanity includes the respect for humanity includes the respect for the self as well. Respect for humanity includes the respect for the self as well. So this is the one thing that he say. He will say that morality requires us that we should respect the humanity in everybody. So everybody has his humanity and it's our duty to respect that. But we also have a humanity and we have a respect to that humanity inside us as well. We have a duty towards everybody else in the world that we must fulfill, but we have a duty towards ourselves also which we must fulfill as well. We should not use anybody else merely as a means, but we should not use ourselves also merely as a means. There is a dignity in all that deserves respect. There is a dignity inside us that also deserves equal amount of respect. So this is what Kant will say in that case. So self-respect is an important part of the respect for humanity. Many people say, Kant will not say so, but many people say that a person who does not respect himself or herself will not be able to respect anybody else in the world. Respect for humanity begins with the respect for the self. So we must always respect ourselves as much as we respect anybody else. So that is the important thing that Kant wrote. Now this also has an interesting consequence. Another interesting consequence. Write down further. According to Kant, suicide and murder both are wrong. Suicide and murder both are wrong and exactly for the same reason as well. And exactly for the same reason as well. There is no qualitative difference between suicide and murder. There is no qualitative difference between suicide and murder. There is no qualitative difference between suicide and murder. This is what Kant will say about suicide and murder. He says here that normally what happens with us is that according to libertarian, for example, suicide is 100% right and murder is 100% wrong. That is what a libertarian will say. But even if you are not a libertarian, and even if you think that murder is wrong and suicide is wrong, then also at least you must be thinking that suicide is a lesser wrong, murder is a bigger wrong and suicide is a lesser wrong. But Kant will say that no, both of them are exactly same. In both of them only one wrong is happening. And what is that wrong? That dignity of a human being is being violated. In the case of murder, that human being is somebody else, and in the case of suicide, that human being happens to be the self, but that does not make a difference. Who that person is does not matter. What matters is that somebody's dignity has been violated, somebody has been used merely as a means. Whoever that somebody is, that does not matter. So qualitatively, Kant will say that suicide and murder are exactly same. Both of them are wrong, and both of them are wrong for the same reason as well. That is the important thing that we need to remember about morality of suicide or murder. That is one thing. Second we will talk about is, write down, lying. Second thing that we will talk about is lying. Now write down a few lines firstly. According to Kant, lying is wrong. Lying is wrong because in this we use the other person, merely as a means to achieve our ends. Merely as a means to achieve our ends. But when we speak the truth, then along with using the other person as a means, we respect his dignity, we respect his or her dignity by giving him the correct information. Thus, according to Kant, lying is always wrong, and speaking truth is, lying is always you can underline if you want, make it bold. Lying is always wrong and truth is always, again underline the always if you want. Truth is always right. Truth is always right. Now this is the reason for which he will say that lying is wrong. Now before we talk about Kantian idea of lying and truth, let us talk about some general idea of lying and truthfulness, because truthfulness and lying is such an important principle of morality that we need to discuss it in a little more detail. So let us talk about truth and lying generally. Some other philosophers, how do they define truth and lying? Because lying is very common in human life. Do you remember in my introduction class, I had asked all of you that do a homework, that next time, for example, next 24 hours, observe yourself, how many times did you lie? Did you do that homework? Well, think about it. Almost all of you, if you are an honest person, if you don't lie, if you lie less maybe, then all of you must have lied a few times, at least in a day. Lying is very common. We all lie a number of times, every day maybe. So lying is very common. Now when we talk about lying, then often we talk about two types of lying. Sometimes, very often rather, we lie with a good intention. So when we lie not in order to harm somebody, but in order to do good to somebody. For example, well, when somebody asks you how are you and you say I am good, which you are not internally, you are internally miserable, but still you say good, you are lying, but that is with good intention. You don't want to share your misery and make other person miserable as well. Your friend brings a gift for you which you don't like, but still you say, wow, it's a beautiful gift. You lie, but your lying is for good intention, not for something bad. So, or if you lie to that old lady in the hospital, remember that case? So, if you lie to that old lady in the hospital, then you are not lying with a bad intention. You don't want to harm her or manipulate her. You are trying to, well, create good for her, that her death should not be more painful. So, in all these cases, we have lied with we decided to lie maybe with the good intention. But there are some lie which we do with which we speak with the bad intention. So, if you look at moral philosophy, when we bad intention means when we lie to somebody in order to harm others, in order to take advantage from others, in order to manipulate others. So, that is lying with a bad intention. Now, in moral philosophy, there is a unanimity. Almost every moral philosopher of any worth in the world will say lying with a bad intention is wrong. We should not lie to somebody with bad intention. But it is this one where controversy is. So, the Lord's number, should we lie to the people with the bad intention or not? So, that is what we can say, we will talk about. So lying is with the bad intention. So, this is what we can see, we will talk about why people say that lying with good intention, is it justified or not. Let me take, I think there is a question. Achha, Caesarean. Oh, Caesarean. Spelling is very important, whoever is writing that question. Mind your spelling, in your exam you will not get marks if you make a spelling mistake like that. It is a blunder. So, Caesarean. Caesarean is unethical. No, there is nothing unethical in that. We will talk about that towards the end of the class. Next question, Braja. Sir, in Belgium, suicide is legal. Is it not indulgence crime in the country? No. Crime is only when it is illegal. It is against law. If it is legal, then how can it be a crime? It may be immoral according to Kantian theory, but it is not illegal. There is differentiate between law and morality. So, if it is legal in Belgium, then how can it be a crime? If it is legal, it means it is not a crime. That is it. So, don't confuse law with the morality. So, something can be immoral but legal. Lying is immoral but legal. Similarly, suicide may be immoral, but it will be legal, of course. In Belgium, maybe. So, let us talk about the lying with the good intention now. Now, if you look at moral philosophy, then perhaps the first important moral philosopher in the Western history at least, who talked about lying with a good intention as an example, was ancient Greek philosopher Plato. Plato was perhaps the first important philosopher in the ancient Greece, Western world, who tried to give us a very exact definition of, we can say exact, a very elaborate discussion about the lying and all, particularly lying in politics. So, Plato said that, well, Plato has written this idea that I am going to talk about. I have taken this idea from a beautiful book, very extremely influential book of Plato called The Republic. So, in the Republic, he had talked about the importance of problem of lying or importance of lying maybe. Now, in the Republic, basically, Republic is a book of politics and morality. So, in this book, first of all, he had said that Plato, I hope that some of you may be aware, according to, you can say, Plato, for example, democracy is a bad system of government. He did not like democracy at all. He said that in a democracy, only manipulative people will be able to get elected by manipulating the public opinion or using the crime and force or money, etc. Democracy is a bad system of government. He said that government must also be done by an expert, the way medical science is done by an expert, or engineering is done by an expert, teaching is done by an expert. And who is that expert who can do the governance? Well, he is the philosopher. So, he talks about what we call as philosopher king. He talks about the philosopher king. King must be philosopher. So, because philosophers know about human nature, they know the human society, they understand human society better, and because of that he said that the philosopher alone should become the king. Now, after the philosopher becomes king, then he said that it is okay for the king to lie to the people for the sake of the good of the people. He called such lie as noble lie. He called such lie as noble lie. So noble lie is the one in which king lies to the people. This idea, according to, can say by of Plato, according to which king can lie to the people for the sake of the good of the people, is known as paternalism. Paternalism we have talked a number of times in my earlier class also. So Plato was a hardcore paternalistic person. So paternalism means what? This term has been derived from the word pater, as we have seen earlier also. So just as in a family, fathers, pater means father. So just as in a family, parents often lie to their children in order to discipline them or sometimes to protect them, maybe that behave properly, otherwise police will take you or Kala Bhoot will come, something like this. So we often can say lie to our children about many things in order to discipline them, not bad intention, but in order to discipline them, sometimes in order to protect them from the truth. They cannot handle the truth sometimes. So we often lie. Similarly, we can say, he said that we in the society are like children. And we are like children, and it is possible for us, it is okay for the, and kings are like the father. So as a good father, it is okay for the king to lie to us for the sake of our good sometimes. So that lie he justified. So, and this is an important question that you have to think about, think of it. Suppose for example, should the government, these are the real question that conflict us in even today's time. Should the government, should the king lie to us? Suppose for example, the share market is falling very badly. And is it right for the king, the prime minister or the finance minister, for example, to lie to the people in order to lift the market sentiment and stop the fall of the share market? That is a valid question, relevant question. Or do you think that was it right for the government to hide the COVID death data in second wave of COVID? Many people claim that government has hidden large number of data. Now, in this case, if you tell the people about the actual number of deaths in the COVID, then it might have created panic in the society. That will have significantly increased the pressure on the healthcare system, which the healthcare system could not handle. So, in order to reduce the pressure on the healthcare system, the government hid the data. So, is it right for the government to hide the data in order to protect the people from the truth? So it is a valid question that today. So Plato said that no, there is nothing wrong in that. It is okay for the king to lie to the people for the sake of the good of the people, to lift the share market, for example, to create peace in the society, calm in the society, reduce panic in the society, etc., etc. This idea is known as paternalism. On the other hand, there are some philosophers who have said that lying is normally wrong. Why is lying normally wrong? Because lying has many negative consequences. There are many negative consequences of lying. Friedrich Nietzsche has talked a lot about that. Nietzsche is one of my favorite philosophers. I will talk about him perhaps sometimes ago. So, Nietzsche has talked about that lying is normally wrong. But why is lying normally wrong? Because if lying often have bad consequence, negative consequence. What are the consequences of lying? Well, think of it. Some of the important consequences of lying are something like this. That lying always reduces the trust between the people. It erodes the trust. And trust is a very important part of human relationship. In fact, there is a beautiful quotation of Nietzsche. Some of you may have heard about it. It is very commonly used about in the social media these days. So Nietzsche had said that what has disturbed me is not that you lied to me. What has shaken me is that I will not be able to trust you again. Now that's a beautiful thing to say about trust and lie. So he says that you lie to me is not a big problem for me. Bigger problem is that after this I will not be able to trust you again, which I want. We all want to trust each other, but after you lie, then I will not be able to trust you again. So that is something that has shaken me. How can I not trust you? So that is the problem with the lying. There is another quotation of some philosopher who had said that once you lie, then even your truth becomes doubtful. So even your truth becomes doubtful. Once you lie, the next time, even if you are speaking truth, I will doubt you. Are you speaking truth or are you lying? So that is the problem with the lying. It reduces the trust among the people, number one. Further, lying often hampers our relationship. Lying often hampers our relationship. So lying often, so just think about it. You can, if you want to do, you can do one more interesting experiment about truth and lying. I often suggest my students to do that. Suppose select one person in your life, somebody who is very close to you, very good friend or brother or sister, mother, father, whoever that person is very close to you. Now, with that person, make a strong commitment that you will never lie to that person for next 1 week, at least for 1 week. So, make a commitment, a strong commitment that both of you will not lie, will not hide anything, at least for a week from each other. And then after everything that comes to your mind about that person, tell that person. Within a few days, you will see that person will become your worst enemy. So, it is impossible for us to, it is very difficult for us to, well, lie, can say speak truth to everybody and maintain that relationship. Every relationship involves some amount of lying at the root of it. So, there is a fact that is true. So, if you speak truth always, then well, many people might become your enemy. Truthful people have more enemy than the friends. Many people might become your enemy, maybe they do not like you, they will not be your good friends. But at the end of it, some people may still remain your friend. They will be the true friends. So, people who are truthful people, they have less number of friends, but whatever relationship that they have, that is a very deep, sound and profound relationship. Liars on the other hand, they may have many relationships, but well, their relationships are very shallow and superficial. So, lying always reduces the quality of relationship, and truth always makes the quality of relationship better, if that relationship can continue with the truthfulness also. That is the second problem with the lying. It reduces the quality of the relationship. Number 2, lying always makes us lonely. Lying makes us lonely. Liars are lonely people. Why are they lonely people? Because every time when you lie, then even if the other person does not know that you are lying, at least in your mind you know that you are lying. So, you will feel yourself psychologically distanced from that person. Lying always creates distance, mental distance, psychological distance between us and the person with whom we lie. We never feel that coziness, that closeness, that well, cohesion with that person in our relationship. Liars are normally lonely people. Not only that, lying always reduces our freedom. How does freedom of choice? How does lying reduces your freedom of choice? Think of it. Every time when you lie, then you know it will restrict your choice and all, because next thing that you have to do, you always have to keep your lie in mind that your next action should not reveal your earlier lie. So, that is a very important thing that you have to always keep in mind when you lie to the other person. So, every time if you speak the truth, you don't have to think, you simply speak whatever that comes, you are free to speak. But in the case of lying, you are not free to speak anything that you want. Your freedom is restricted, your freedom is limited after lie. Every lie creates a boundary. You cannot go in that direction because that will reveal your lie. You cannot go in that direction because that will reveal your lie. Your choice becomes constricted in that case. That's why Jesus said, there is a saying in the Bible, for example, that truth shall make you free. Truth shall make you free. Truth and freedom is very closely related. This is what Gandhi also said, that truth alone can make you free. That's why Gandhi said that without truth, freedom will be never meaningful. So only by truth you can attain the freedom that will be a true freedom for us. So lying makes us unfree and truth shall make us free. This is what Bible also said, Gandhi also said, and Nietzsche also is saying. So it reduces our freedom. Lying always makes us weaker. Lying makes us weaker. Liars are weak people. Why lying makes us weaker? Because when you lie to somebody, then can you tell me what is the most common emotion that comes into your mind? Well, fear. That you are always afraid that somebody should not know your lie. Nobody should discover your lie. So it will create fear, and fear makes us weaker. So liars are normally afraid people. This fear that they have in their mind often reduces their self-confidence, self-esteem, self-respect, etc., etc. So that weakens their character, that weakens their personality. Liars are weak people. Not only that, lying always increases the cognitive burden on us. Lying always increases the cognitive burden on us. It increases the cognitive. What is the meaning of that? Well, idea here is that every time when you lie, then you have to remember all your lies. You don't have to remember your truth. but you have to, because truth is there for everybody to see. But lying is something that you must always remember. Not only lie, but context also. That what did I lie to you and what did I lie to that person? I should not mix also that. So that will also reveal my lie. So every lie, along with its context, along with its background, it must be remembered. Otherwise, it will put you in threat in that case. And well, so every lie has to be remembered. And there is a beautiful quotation of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln had said, nobody has a good enough memory to be a perfect liar. Nobody has a good enough memory to be a perfect liar. So sometimes or the other, your memory will deceive you. And in that case, you might blurt out the truth and you will be caught. So you cannot remember all your lies, you don't have that good. So you have to write down all your lies in a diary. And even that diary can be found by the CBI or ED sometimes. And you are in threat. So lying always creates cognitive burden on us, it always creates pressure on our memory. And last, one more thing, lying always consumes our creative energy. So lying always consumes our creative energy, because he will say that, well, lying is an act of creativity, all of you know. So every time in your life you have to create the whole system that will be the basis of your lie. It is the act of creativity. Truth does not require any creativity. You simply say what is there. But in lie, you have to create everything. It is a imagination. That is the reason that, you know, small children, young children do not lie. So they do not have that creative power to lie. But as they grow up, then their mind becomes intelligent enough, they start becoming creative, they start lying after that. Lying is an act of creativity, and that creativity is the most powerful energy that we have, according to Nietzsche. So that creative energy that we have is something that, well, allows us to lead our life, create our life according to our own will. And when you lie, then you are wasting that creative energy in doing something which is otherwise so problematic. So because of all these problems, Nietzsche will say that lying is wrong and we should not lie. So that is what Nietzsche will say. But if you look at this argument, then this argument, of course, you all know, appears to be a not appears to be, it is actually a consequentialist argument. And it suffers from the same problem that every consequentialist argument suffers from. That, suppose for example, some people say, okay, I'm okay with all these consequences, then can I lie? Then Nietzsche will say it's up to you then. So there are negative consequences, but I'm willing to pay the price. If I am willing to pay the price, then can lying be justified for me? It's up to me to decide after that. There is no judgment as such away from these things. So this is where the weakness of this argument actually comes up. But Kant will be very different from all these people. Kant will say that, well, these consequences are very important, no doubt about that, but I don't bother for consequences. Remember, consequences do not matter in ethics at all. So Kant will say that we do not bother about any of these consequences. He will say that even if these consequences are not there, then also lying is wrong, categorically wrong. Lying is always wrong. Not only that, Kant will be strongly against any form of paternalism. He will say that forget about noble, lies can never be noble. He will say that we should never lie, even for the sake of the good of the person. Lying is wrong. We should not lie. So in this case, further we can see that even with the good intention, he will say that we should not lie. So Kant will say lying is always, this is the meaning of the term always, that lying is always wrong. We should, under no circumstances, we should lie. So this is what he will say about lying. In fact, he has said that, he has compared that lying with his, like according to him, lying is a form of enslavement. He will say that lying is a form of enslavement. When we lie to somebody, then we are essentially treating the other person as a slave and ourselves as a master. Why it is a form of enslavement? Think of it. What is the meaning of enslavement, first of all? Enslavement essentially means that a slave, let's say master makes a decision and slaves have to blindly follow that decision. That is what we call the slavery. Slaves cannot exercise their autonomy, they cannot make a decision. So decision has to be made by the master, slaves has to implement that decision only. in lying we are acting like similar manner. So when I lie to you, for example, then by lying I am forcing you to make a decision which you otherwise with true information would not have made. So I am manipulating you to make a decision which otherwise autonomously you would not have made. I am treating you more like a slave. So I am making a decision, okay, I want you to do that, and by lying it, I am making you to do that. So I make a decision, and without your knowledge, I am forcing you to make the same decision, follow that decision. This is what is slave meant. Gandhi also said a similar thing. Gandhi also said that lying is a form of violence. So I hope that also you must have. Lying is a form of violence. When we lie to somebody, then we are being violence is a mental form of violence. That's why Gandhi said that truth and non-violence always go together. Lying, you cannot lie and be non-violent. The moment you are lying, you are already violent. So without truth, non-violence is impossible. Truth is a form of non-violence and lying is a form of violence. So this is what Kant will say in that case. So Kant in fact had said that lying is there is a quotation of Kant. He had said somewhere that lying is the prime example of immoral behavior. He said that every immoral behavior begins with lying. So if one commitment that you have to make in your life, that moral commitment, that make one commitment, I will not lie ever. If you make a commitment not to lie, then be sure no other wrong you can do. Every wrong begins with lying. Whether you talk about murder, rape, molestation, theft, robbery, snatching, corruption, every wrong that you can talk about, it involves lying. If you remove lying from that wrong, this wrong can never exist. So lying is the central clog in the in the wheel of morality. If you remove lying, the whole in the wheel of immorality. So if you remove that central clog, lying, then we see the whole edifice of immorality will fall down. So it is the prime example of every immoral behavior. It is the central piece of immorality according to him. So this is what Kant will say. Gandhi had also said a similar thing. I hope that you must have heard about that quotation of Gandhi. Initially Gandhi said that God is truth. Later on he reversed the order. He said truth is God. And this reversal of order, he has called this as the greatest insight of his whole life. That initially he said God is truth, but now no, God is not truth. Truth is God. So the moment you speak the truth, then you are like a God. You are closer to God. So he elevated the level of truthfulness to the level of godliness in a way. So this is what Gandhi also said. You know, there is a couplet of Kabir. I hope that many of you might have read some couplets of Dohe of Kabir. There is a couplet of Kabir in which Kabir had said that सांच बराबर तप नहीं, झूठ बराबर पाप, जाको मन में सांच है, ताको मन में आप. So सांच बराबर तप नहीं. There is no pious act bigger than truth. And झूठ बराबर पाप. There is no sin worse than lying. So he said, Kabir said that truth is highest level of morality is truth. When you speak truth, you are like a God. And when you are lying, then you are the worst of what you can. We have the possibility of being the best of ourselves and worst of ourselves. So Kabir said that when you speak truth, then you are the best of what you can be. And when you lie, then you are the worst of what you possibly can. No sin is worse than lying, and no pious act is better than truth. So this is what these people will say. So all these three people, Kant, Gandhi and Kabir, they will agree on this matter that truth is always right and lying is always wrong. So he was absolutely that type of, you can say, lying and truthfulness he talked about. Now the next important question is that, so in this case, by using this idea of Kant, what do you think? Should you lie to that old lady in the hospital? I hope that you remember that case that I had discussed in my introduction class. That lady is in the hospital whose son died in a road accident. This lady is on her deathbed. The day after tomorrow she is going to die. And tomorrow morning she asks you that, where is my son? Now you have two choices in front of you. You can tell her the truth that your son is no more. And if you tell her the truth, then this lady, who is even otherwise going to die, she will have a very painful death. And the second choice in front of you is that you can lie to her. If you lie to her, then, this lady who is even otherwise going to die tomorrow will have a comparatively peaceful death. Now, what do you think Kant will say in that case? Should we speak truth to her or should you lie? Well, I hope that you can answer the Kantian idea. Kant will say you must tell her the truth. Why should you tell her the truth? Because Kant will say that if you lie her, then first of all you are using her merely as a means to your end, to achieve your end of making her death peaceful. So she is being manipulated, she has been undermined. In that case, she is being used merely as a means. Kant will say that is wrong. If you speak the truth, then maybe she will become sad. But Kant will say that sadness is also an important part of our life. Sometimes in sadness, we actually understand the true meaning of what life is. So in happiness, we hardly ever understand the meaning of life. In happiness, our life is more shallow. It's only in sadness that we actually understand the true meaning of what life is. So in sadness, because in sadness we often think about what life is, what is the meaning of life, purpose of life, nature of life. So in sadness we sometimes get some of the greatest insight about what is life, what my life is. So sadness plays a very important part in our life. Sometimes we value our sadness, it's my sadness. So let me, well, bear it, let me tolerate it, let it be a part of my life. So Kant will say that this lady, she may become sad, but that sadness is a part of her life. Who are you to deprive her of her sadness? Maybe in that sadness she might get some new insight about her life before her death. She might look at life in a new manner. Who are you to deprive her of her insight that she might possibly get at that point of time? Who are you to think that she cannot handle her sadness? Well, she can perhaps handle her sadness. So tell her the truth. Well, if she becomes sad, try to comfort her, try to calm her down, try to soothe her, but tell her the truth. She deserves to know the truth before she dies. And we have no right to deprive her of what she deserves. Kant will say, you must tell her the truth. So that is the type of thing that Kant possibly will say about the truthfulness here. So that is the truth and lying here. So he will say that lying is always wrong and truth is always right. Even white lie is wrong. White lie, blue lie, red lie, yellow lie, whatever lie you say, lies are always wrong. Now, such a strong emphasis on absolute truthfulness and absolute prohibition of lying may make Kantian theory sometimes a little difficult to apply. Let's take a case that we had already talked about in some other class earlier. Tell me, which class did we talk about? So let's take that case that we had talked about in our earlier class. Suppose one day you are standing on the gate of your house and one of your friend comes running to you and he asks you that please hide me inside your house. There is a murderer behind me. He is trying to kill me. Now, what is the right thing to do in that case? Of course, hide your friend, save your life, save his life. Now, suppose you hide your friend. 20 minutes later, that murderer comes to you and he asks you that, have you seen Mr. X? Now, what should you do in that case? I hope you remember we have discussed that case in the Mills class. Now, what was the Mills solution in this particular case? I hope you remember Mill's solution was that Mill will say make an exception. Remember, truth was a rule for Mill and rules can have an exception. So Mill will say make an exception, but Kant will say that no, you cannot make an exception. Categorical imperatives are exceptionless. You cannot make an exception to a categorical imperative to the truth. So you must tell the truth even to that murderer. Now in this case, perhaps for example, how many of you will be able to follow the Kantian dictum? You might possibly say Kant that Mr. Kant, if I tell the truth, then my friend will die. But then Kant will say that, well, your friend will die is a consequence and consequences do not matter. So even if the consequence is bad, then also we must do the right thing. Right thing is not dependent on, is not determined by the nature of the consequence. So death of your friend is a consequence that has no relevance for the morality of your act. You must speak the truth. Now in this case, how many of you will be able to follow the Kantian dictum? Perhaps none of you. Kant will also not allow you to let your friend die in that case. Now in this situation, Kant will give you a solution that will be the most important solution, most important message of ethics that you can get till now in our class, in our course. And this idea that we are going to talk about in the rest of the class now, well, it is something that you can use in many case studies also. So, what we should do in that case? Kant will say, even in such a case, well, lying is wrong, we should not lie. Be very clear about that, lying is wrong, I will never lie, come what may. But in such a situation where truth is so difficult and lying is wrong, that is why the moral dilemma comes up. Moral dilemma comes up because, well, right is, you can say wrong is wrong and right is difficult. Had right been easier, then, well, everybody will do the right thing. But sometimes right becomes very difficult, for example, in this case. So, in such a case, Kant will say, wrong is wrong, don't do that. But in such a case, what you can do is that you can try to find a third way out, like, for example, in this case, speaking a deceptive truth. So, for example, you can find a third way out, fourth way out, fifth way out, sixth way out. There are many other ways can be possible. So, Kant will say that you can speak a third way like deceptive. You can tell that murderer maybe that, yes, I had seen Mr. X, he was in the park in the morning. Now, your friend may be in the park in the morning. You might have seen him there. You are not lying. But, well, you are fulfilling your purpose in that case. Or you can find a fourth way out also. Fourth way could be, suppose when you are hiding your friend in your house, you can tell your friend that, my friend, I am hiding you right now, but I be sure I will not lie. So, when the murderer comes, then I will hold that murderer for 15-20 minutes. Well, I will try to engage him. By this time, leave my, you can say, I will leave my house from the back door and hide somewhere else. I will hold that murderer for half an hour to give you enough time to hide somewhere else. And when the murderer comes to you, then, well, try to engage him in a conversation, try to talk to him, try to distract him somehow. And maybe after half an hour, tell that murderer, okay, I had seen him, but now I don't know where he is. You are not lying in that case. Or if you are a very good friend, then call the police maybe. Fight with that murderer. But don't lie, lying is wrong. This is what Kant will say in that situation. Now, in his life also, Kant had done a very interesting thing that is a very good example of this particular thing. So, there is a very beautiful story about Kant, interesting story on this sense about Kant, that as I told you in my introduction of Kantianism class, that Kant's ideas were quite offending to the church. So, church initially tried to get his books banned, which was not successful because the minister told the king that 90% people will not read him and the 10% people who will read him will not understand him. So, on that ground his books were not banned. Then after some time what happened, that the church again got offended by some of the books of Kant. Then church came to the king again and asked the king that if you do not want to ban his books, please ask him not to write anything which is offensive to the church. To which the king agreed, and a message was sent to Kant that give an undertaking in writing that you will not write anything which is offending to the church. If you do not give that undertaking, then all your books will be banned. Now Kant found himself in a very, very difficult situation between devil and deep sea wala situation. If he gives that undertaking, he will never be able to write anything which is so difficult for a creative person like him. And if he does not give that undertaking, then, well, say his books will be banned. So he found himself in a very difficult devil and deep sea wala situation. Now in this situation, he found a third way out. He gave that undertaking that he cannot say no to the king, but he wrote that undertaking in a very cleverly worded language. He wrote something like this, that I, Immanuel Kant, as a loyal subject of His Highness, name of the king, hereby declare that I will not write anything that is offending to the church. And he signed on that letter. This letter was sent to the king. King was happy, church was happy. Now, this king was a very old king, 82 years already. 2 years later, well, this king died, 84 years of age. And after a month of the death of that king, well, Kant got his next book published. Now, people were surprised, they were shocked, they start asking him the question that you, the founder of the greatest principle of morality, founder of the universal principle of morality, you, the saint of Königsberg, he was known as the saint of Königsberg. Königsberg city is even today known as known by his name. He is still known as the Saint of Königsberg. That 20 kilometers of radius where he used to live throughout his life, all the 80 years of his life, is a type of public museum these days. So every philosopher, whenever they try to go there, they try to visit that place to see what his life perhaps would be. So people started asking him the question that you, the Saint of Königsberg, you broke your promise, you lied, how could you do that? To which he said that no, I did not lie. Look at the promise that I had made. I had made the promise that, well, I, Immanuel Kant, as a loyal subject of His Highness, name of the king, now His Highness is no longer there. So I am no longer his subject, I am a subject of a new king. So the moment His Highness died, well, I am free from that promise. Now this new king has to ask me to make a promise again, which the new king did not ask him to. New king was a young king and he was more sympathetic to ideas. This is how Kant freed himself from his own promise. And this is what Kant will say here. Kant will say that whenever you make a promise, then always be very clear about what promise. Every word that comes out of your mouth, well, you must weigh it down properly. You must evaluate it properly. Can you respect your word or not? So if you lie, if you say something and you don't do that, that is what lying is. If you say something and you don't do, then Kant will say forget about the person who is being used as a means. First person that is being used as a means, a violated dignity is the you. You say something and you don't. Are you not disrespecting yourself? Self-respect is a very important part of the respect for humanity. So Kant will say that if you lie to somebody, then forget about that person maybe. More importantly, you are actually violating your own dignity. You are contradicting yourself. You are saying something which you are not doing. Kant will say, as a human being, as a rational person, we should never do that. Every single word that comes out of our mouth has a sanctity, has a dignity, and it is our duty to respect our own word. So every word that comes out of your mouth, evaluate that, think about it properly before you speak. No word should come out of your mouth which you cannot uphold. So always evaluate that, can I uphold this word that I am speaking? If yes, speak it, otherwise don't. Whenever you make a promise, then ask yourself, can I always fulfill that promise? If yes, make that promise, otherwise don't. Or if you make a promise, always keep an exit clause from that promise. Do not make yourself completely binding by a promise. So, because once you make a promise, then morally you are bound to follow that. This is a unique characteristics of a human being. Human beings are the only animal, think of it. Human beings are only animals who can be bound by the word. All other animals can be bound only by a chain. We, on the other hand, can be bound only by the words. We say something and we feel ourselves obligated for that. When I say, for example, that tomorrow at 11 o'clock I will be in the class, then you don't have to put somebody behind me to drag me to the classroom. No, you can forget it and you can be sure that unless and when something very unfortunate happens, well, I will be in the classroom on time. So in this case, the moment I say that I will be here in the classroom at 11 o'clock, then that becomes binding upon me. I feel that I must do it. How can I break my own promise maybe? So when you make a promise, then be very clear about it, that it is your duty to respect that. Respect your word, respect your promise. This is what Kant will say. So, but lying is wrong, you should not do that. If you look at this third way out, then there is a beautiful example of third way out, finding a third way out in Indian mythology also. Some of you may have, many of you, most of you maybe might have heard that story. In the Mahabharata, there is a beautiful story. In the Mahabharata, Yudhishthir, the eldest of the Pandavas, he was the person who had never lied in his life. He was a follower of Kantian theory, or maybe a forerunner of Kantian theory. He had never lied in his life. But that's why he was called Dharmaraj. Now on the 13th day of the war, when the 13th day of Mahabharata war, the Senapati of the Kauravas, Guru Dronacharya, on that day he was on a rampage. He was so ferocious that he was killing the Pandava army like left, right and center. Nobody was able to stop him. He was so ferocious on that day that it appeared that by evening, well, he will kill all the Pandavas. And war will end on that day. Pandavas will be defeated and Kauravas will win. Nobody was able to stop him. Now people thought in the Pandava army, the only way to stop him was that somebody will give him a news that his son Ashwathama is dead. And when he loves his son so much that he will not be able to bear that, and he will well, become so sad, and in that sadness he will sit down, he will not be able to fight. Of course, in sadness we become, well, low in energy. He will not be able to fight. Somebody can easily kill him and save the day. But the problem is that he will not trust anyone. He will trust only Yudhishthir. Now everybody from Pandava army started telling Yudhishthir that today you have to lie, today you have to lie. It is a question of life and death. So if you don't lie today, then we are all gone today, we will be defeated today. So it's a question of life and death, we have to lie, you have to lie. Now at the end of it, Yudhishthir said that I have never lied in my life, today also I will not lie, but I will speak a deceptive truth. Now somebody killed an elephant named Ashwathama, a rumor was spread that Ashwathama got killed. Now when this rumor reached Dronacharya, then he became shocked. He came to Yudhishthir and asked him that what is the news. He said that Ashwathama gatohata narova kunjuro. Ashwathama got killed, not the man but the elephant. And this second part of the message was drawn in the noise created by Pandavas, particularly Krishna when he started when blowing his conch, his shank, Panchajade. And so much of noise was created that the second half of the that message was simply drawn. And first half, the Ashwathama got killed. It reached Dronacharya. He sat quietly there with sadness. Somebody came and killed him. This was perhaps the first recorded case of fake news in the history of humanity. So we, the Indians, were were the inventors of fake news also. That's why we have so much of fake news in India today. So this is what Kant will say, maybe we can do possibly. But lying is wrong, we should never do. So this is what he says, it is wrong, it should never be done. Only thing that we can do in such a case is to find maybe a third way out. Now in this sense again, I will change the whole meaning of the term morality now. Because in the first class, if you remember, I had told you that morality is prescriptive. Morality is prescriptive, but today we will see that no, morality is not essentially prescriptive. More than prescriptive, morality is proscriptive. Morality is prescriptive, but morality does not tell you, prescribes you, morality proscribes you. Morality does not tell you what is right, nobody else can tell you what is right. Kant cannot tell you what is right, Gandhi cannot tell you what is right, I cannot tell you right. Who can tell you what is right? Only you can tell what is right for you. Because only you have a complete access to your life's information. If I suggest something to you what is right, then my suggestion will be very superficial and shallow because I don't know anything about your life. So without knowing about your life and conditions and information, etc., how can anybody, and nobody else knows your life the way you know yourself. So only you have access to all the information about yourself. Only you are privy to all information. Only you can decide what is right, and that's what autonomy is. So nobody else can tell you what is right. What we can tell you as a moral philosopher, well, what we can tell you is what is wrong, that we should not do. So morality is not about doing the right thing. Morality is more about not doing the wrong thing. That is a very important aspect of morality that we have to understand. You know, there is a beautiful quotation of Mark Twain, one of my favorite author. He had said somewhere that morality, like art, is just about drawing a line. Now that's a beautiful way to describe morality. Art, for example, is a morality like art. What is art? What do the artists do? Artists draw a line, but they draw the line in such a manner that it becomes a beautiful piece of art. And when we draw the line, then it becomes such a ugly picture that you sometimes see on my board. So artists also draw the line. We also draw a line. Well, but their line is great art, our line is not that great. Morality is also about that. Morality is also about drawing a line, that you have to draw the line and make a commitment that below this line I will never go, come what may. Even if I die, then also I will not cross this line. When we are so clear about that line that you never cross, then this line that we have drawn is called the categorical imperative or principles. So when your mind becomes so clear, there is no confusion, there is no doubt, there is no, well, discussion in your mind, internal conflict, that should I cross this line or not? No, I don't have to do, that's it. Come what may. This is some line that I will never cross. This is line that I will never breach. So when you become so clear in your mind, then that clarity of mind is what we call the categorical imperative or the morality. So, and line, if you look at it, every human, this is the distinctive characteristics of a human being, that every human being always draw lines. Every human being. Some people draw the line very high like Gandhi, some people draw the line very low. But everybody draw, even a terrorist for example have a line that they do not cross. Even a criminal has a line that they do not cross. So that is what defines human being. So Kant will say that that line is something that's very important that you should know. So morality is not about doing so. This is prohibited, don't do that. Then after find a third way, fourth way, fifth way and sixth way. That is your way. You can decide what can be done. So morality is not about doing the right thing, that can be 100. Morality is more about not doing the wrong, which is clear. So that clarity in the mind is what we call the categorical imperative. And this point you have to remember in many case study. In every case study when you write your answer, we'll revise this point in a later class in more detail. But in every case study when you answer, then you must first of all find out what is wrong that you should not do. And then after try to find the best possible thing that you can do. So in case study what you have to do is to find the best way out without doing the wrong. Without doing the wrong is the moral part, and best way out is your autonomy. That is how autonomy and categorical imperatives. This line that we draw is called categorical imperative. That is what Kant will say. So write down one line here, a few lines rather in this sense. But sometimes speaking truth or doing the right thing and doing the right thing may become very difficult. But sometimes speaking truth or doing the right thing may become very difficult. But then also we should not lie or do the wrong. But then also we should not lie or do the wrong. But in such cases, we can try to find a third way out. But in such cases, we can try to find a third way out. This very attempt to, write down further, this very attempt to find a third way out and uphold the values of truth and morality, itself will give some moral value. To our actions. So this is what he will say. He will say even in such a difficult situation, lying is wrong, we should never do that. But in such a case, we can try to find a third way out. So this attempt to find a third way out, Kant will say, itself will give some moral value to your actions. So for example, even in such a difficult situation, at least you are still thinking about, I don't want to do the wrong. I want to uphold the values of truth. And remember, in Kantian theory, morality is not in the world outside, morality is always in the mind. So even in such a difficult situation, you are trying to uphold truth and morality. That is something that will give you some value to your action. This is what Kant will say we can possibly do. So that is the meaning of this thing about lying and truthfulness. Let's talk about some questions. Sir, according to Kant, is white lie wrong also? Anil Kumar, I hope you got your answer. All the lies are wrong. White, red, blue, yellow, black, all the lies are wrong. Next question. Sir, is this concept relatable to the case of Yudhishthir and Ashwatthama in Mahabharata? You got the answer. Nimai, sir, when Karna went to Guru Parasuram, that time Karna lied to Guru Parsuram by saying that Karna is from Kshatriya. It was another lie. Yes, he did not say that he was from Kshatriya. He said that he was not Kshatriya, he was a Brahman. So it was a clear lie. That's why he had to pay the price for that. He got a curse for that. So what Karna said was a lie, and what Yudhishthir said was the, I can say, deceptive truth. So deceptive truth is better than lie, and Karna had to pay a price for that. Big price for that. You all know about that if you are aware of that story. So that is it for today. So today we'll stop at tomorrow. We will talk about some more applications of Kantianism, and then after we'll talk about other aspect of Kantian theory further. So that's it for today. See you tomorrow.